The billionaire CEO never touched anyone until car trouble left him and his secretary in the rain. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. The rain poured down heavily, the kind of storm that made everything feel cold and distant. The streets were slick with water, and the normally bustling city seemed to be swallowed up by the downpour. Cars honked their horns as they slowly crawled through the slick roads, but one car, parked under the weak glow of a streetlight, had its engine dead. Inside the car, Liam Parker, the billionaire CEO of Parker Enterprises, sat in disbelief, his eyes scanning the sky, as if expecting the rain to suddenly stop. Liam had been through countless high-pressure meetings, handled millions in investments, but this was different. He was stuck, in the rain, alone. For the first time in a long time, the powerful CEO was completely out of control. He glanced over at his assistant, Julia, who was sitting quietly next to him. Julia, a woman in her early 30s, was always on point at work. Smart, efficient, and always calm under pressure. But today, she too seemed out of her element. "This is just perfect," Liam muttered, frustration clear in his voice. Julia turned to him, a slight smile playing on her lips. "We'll be fine," she said, trying to reassure him. "We'll get out of here." Liam couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. "Out of here? It's a storm, Julia. We're stuck." They both sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of the rain hammering on the roof of the car, the occasional rumble of thunder in the distance. The minutes felt like hours. It was just then that a woman walked past their car, her umbrella barely keeping the rain off her. She looked at the two of them, her eyes briefly meeting Liam's before quickly looking away. She must have been cold too, he thought. What he didn't expect was that she would stop. Without a word, she turned around, walked to the car, and tapped lightly on the window. Julia rolled it down a little. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. "You're in a bit of a bind, huh?" "Yeah," Julia replied with a half laugh. "Our car's broken down, and we're waiting for a tow." The woman glanced at the car for a moment before looking back at Julia and Liam. "I've got a blanket in my bag. You two look like you could use something to keep warm." Julia looked over at Liam, who seemed a little too proud to accept help. But something about the woman's calm demeanor made him hesitate. He nodded reluctantly, and the woman smiled, handing them the blanket. "It's not much, but it'll help until the tow truck comes." "Thank you," Liam said, his voice softer than usual. As the woman walked away, he couldn't help but notice how she moved with a quiet confidence. She wasn't in a hurry, and she didn't seem to care about the storm. She simply wanted to help. He glanced at Julia. "I didn't expect that," he said, his voice trailing off. Julia shrugged. "Sometimes, it's the small things that matter the most." Just then, the sound of a car engine revving in the distance broke the silence. Liam could see the tow truck approaching. The rain hadn't stopped, but for the first time that evening, he felt a little more hopeful. As they got into the tow truck, Liam couldn't help but think about the stranger who had helped them. She was just another person in the world, yet she had made an impact in a way he hadn't expected. There was something about her that stayed with him, even as the city lights flickered in the rearview mirror. It wasn't until much later that night, when he found himself alone in his penthouse, that he realized something. He hadn't felt that kind of warmth in a long time. The CEO of a billion-dollar company, surrounded by luxury. And yet, he had felt more connection with a complete stranger in a storm than he had in his entire corporate life. Liam Parker had never really touched anyone before, never allowed himself to be vulnerable. But that night, something had changed. He didn't know it yet, but he would find out soon enough. That stranger, that small act of kindness, would eventually lead to something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. The next day, Liam sat in his penthouse office overlooking the city, the rain still pouring down outside. His mind kept drifting back to the stranger who had helped him the night before. He wasn't sure why, but something about her stuck with him. He had met countless people in his life, high-powered executives, investors, and colleagues, but none had made him feel the way she did. She wasn't impressed by his wealth or status. She didn't care about his title or the luxurious car he drove. She simply helped, with no strings attached. It was a feeling he hadn't had in a long time, genuine human connection. He sat back in his chair, staring out the window, and realized something. He had spent so many years focusing on building his empire, on making money, on gaining power, but he had never truly allowed himself to connect with anyone. Not in a real way. Not in the way he had with her. His thoughts were interrupted when his phone buzzed on his desk. It was a message from Julia. Liam, the meeting with Carter Enterprises is rescheduled for this afternoon. Don't forget, we need to finalize the deal. He sighed and stood up, grabbing his jacket. He had work to do. But as he walked out of his office and into the elevator, his mind kept drifting back to the woman in the rain. Who was she? Why had she been so kind? He shook his head, dismissing the thought. He had a company to run, and distractions were something he couldn't afford. The day went by in a blur of meetings and calls, and by the time evening rolled around, Liam was exhausted. He stood on the balcony of his penthouse, looking out at the sparkling city lights. The weather had cleared, and the streets below were dry once more. He thought about the rainstorm the previous night and how, in that moment, he had felt something he hadn't felt in years, vulnerable. He hadn't realized it at the time, but something about being stuck in that storm had made him question everything. He had always been the one in control, the one who made the decisions, the one who fixed problems. But in that moment, he was just a man, stuck in the rain, relying on the kindness of a stranger. His phone buzzed again, and this time, it was an unknown number. He hesitated before answering, unsure of who it could be. "Hello," he said, his voice still rough from the long day. "Hi, is this Liam?" a woman's voice asked. It was the same woman from last night. Liam's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, this is Liam." "Who's this?" "It's the woman from last night," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "I was hoping to talk to you." Liam felt his pulse quicken. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "I wanted to thank you for letting me help you," she said. "You look like you could use it." Liam smiled, his thoughts swirling. "I should be the one thanking you," he said. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "I'm glad I could help," she replied. There was a pause, and then she added, "Listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've been thinking about what happened last night, and I was wondering if you'd like to meet again sometime. Maybe get to know each other better." Liam's breath caught in his chest. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to reach out, to want more from him. And yet, there it was. An invitation, a chance to connect. He thought for a moment before responding, his voice softer now. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." They made plans to meet the following evening, and Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't sure where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to something that wasn't related to work. The next evening, Liam arrived at the cafe they had agreed on. He was nervous, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He wasn't sure what to expect, but as he walked inside and saw her sitting at a table near the window, he felt a surge of warmth. She looked up, smiled, and waved him over. "Liam, over here," she called. Liam walked over to her, his heart racing. As he sat down across from her, he couldn't help but notice how easy it felt to be around her. No pretenses, no expectations, just two people having a conversation. "I'm glad you came," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I've been thinking about last night a lot." "So have I," Liam said, his voice quieter now. "I don't know what it was, but it felt different." "You felt different." She smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "Maybe we're both just looking for something real," she said. "Something that goes beyond the surface." Liam nodded, his thoughts swirling. He had spent so many years chasing success, but now, sitting here with her, he realized that maybe what he had been searching for all along wasn't success at all. It was something far more valuable. Connection. Genuine, human connection. As they sat there, talking about everything and nothing, Liam felt a shift inside himself. He wasn't just a billionaire CEO anymore. He was a man, sitting across from a woman who had shown him kindness when he needed it most. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was truly seen. The following week, Liam found himself thinking about the woman from the cafe more than he cared to admit. He had spent his entire life focused on business, on deals, on growth. But this woman, with her warmth and authenticity, had managed to stir something in him he had buried deep. It wasn't just the kindness she had shown him that night. It was the way she made him feel like he was more than just a successful businessman. He was a person who could be vulnerable, who could connect. He didn't know why it felt so easy with her, but it did. Every conversation, every meeting, felt natural, effortless. For the first time in years, he felt seen for who he truly was. And yet, despite the growing connection between them, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was keeping something from her. He had never told her the full extent of who he really was, his wealth, his power, the empire he had built from the ground up. It wasn't that he wanted to hide it. It was just that he didn't want to be defined by it. He wanted to be seen as Liam, the man, not Liam, the billionaire CEO. But every time they met, he felt the tension of that secret building between them, and it was starting to weigh on him. One afternoon, as they sat at a cafe discussing their week, Julia, his assistant, texted him to remind him about an upcoming business dinner. Liam glanced at the screen, then at the woman across from him. He smiled. "I'm sorry, I have to run to a meeting," he said. "I'll make it up to you." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Another one of those business dinners?" she asked, a playful tone in her voice. Liam chuckled, feeling a sense of ease he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Yes, I'm afraid so," he said. "But I promise, I'll make it up to you soon. How about we do this again tomorrow?" She smiled warmly. "I'd like that." As Liam stood up to leave, he felt that familiar pull in his chest, the desire to stay with her, to continue their conversation, to let the world outside fade away. But he couldn't. Not yet. He had business to attend to. He gave her a lingering look, his thoughts racing, before he walked out the door. That night, at the business dinner, Liam couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting back to her. He found himself distracted, his mind replaying their conversations, her laugh, the way she made him feel. He hadn't felt this way in years. At the end of the dinner, he made a decision. He couldn't keep hiding the truth from her. He needed to be honest, to show her who he really was. He couldn't risk losing her over something as trivial as his wealth. The next day, they met again at the same cafe, and this time, Liam knew he couldn't hold back any longer. They exchanged pleasantries, but there was a shift in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. He could feel it, and so could she. "I need to tell you something," Liam said, his voice low, his gaze meeting hers. She looked at him curiously, sensing the change in his demeanor. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone soft. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I haven't been completely honest with you," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He hesitated for a moment, then let the words spill out. "I'm not just Liam. I'm the CEO of Parker Enterprises. I've built $1 billion company, and I've been running it for years." He looked at her, waiting for her reaction, unsure of what to expect. She stared at him for a moment, processing his words, before she finally spoke. "I figured as much," she said, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. "But why didn't you tell me sooner?" Liam exhaled, relieved. "I didn't want you to see me as just the CEO," he admitted. "I wanted you to see me as the person I am, not the title I carry." She nodded, her smile widening. "I understand," she said. "But you don't have to hide who you are from me. I liked you before I knew who you really were, and I like you now." Liam felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had been carrying that secret for so long, and now it was out in the open. "I'm glad," he said, his voice genuine. They sat there in silence for a moment, just looking at each other, and Liam realized something. She had accepted him, flaws and all. She hadn't judged him for his wealth, hadn't treated him any differently. She had seen the real him, and that was all he had ever wanted. As they left the cafe that day, Liam felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He had finally let someone in, and for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. He didn't know where their relationship would go, but he was willing to find out. And for once, that felt like enough. Over the next few weeks, Liam and the woman, her name was Sarah, spent more time together. Their relationship, though still new, was blossoming in ways that neither of them had expected. Liam, the billionaire CEO, was no longer just about business meetings and boardrooms. He found himself looking forward to the small moments he shared with Sarah. They went to cafes, visited art galleries, and took long walks through the city. Each day felt like a fresh chapter of discovery, not just of each other, but of himself. The power and wealth that had once been his world seemed so distant now, replaced by something far more meaningful: connection. It wasn't just Sarah who had changed. Liam himself was beginning to change. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly living, not just existing. However, Even as his feelings for Sarah deepened, a part of him couldn't escape the reality of his life. He was still the CEO of a billion-dollar company, and his responsibilities demanded his attention at all times. One evening, after spending a quiet dinner with Sarah, Liam received a call from his assistant, Julia. "Liam, we need you at the office. There's an urgent situation with the merger proposal. The board is waiting for you." Liam sighed, running his hand through his hair. He looked at Sarah, who had been quietly watching him. She could tell something was weighing on him. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice apologetic. "I have to go." Sarah smiled softly. "It's okay. I understand." But Liam didn't want to leave. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was torn between two worlds: his life in the high-stakes corporate world and his new, more personal connection with Sarah. He kissed her on the cheek before leaving, feeling a pang of guilt as he stepped into his car and drove to the office. The meeting was tense, as expected. The board members were all anxious about the merger, and Liam had to work quickly to address their concerns. As he sat at the head of the table, giving his usual confident answers, he couldn't help but feel disconnected from it all. The money, the power, it all felt so empty compared to the warmth he had shared with Sarah. That night, after the meeting was over, Liam went back to his penthouse. It was late, and the city was quiet. He walked into the living room, but instead of feeling the usual sense of accomplishment, he felt an emptiness he couldn't ignore. He pulled out his phone and stared at Sarah's name in his contacts. Without thinking, he sent her a message. "I miss you." A few minutes later, his phone buzzed with her reply. "I miss you too." The words were simple, but they felt like a balm to his weary soul. He realized then that he couldn't keep living this double life. He didn't want to be just the CEO anymore. He wanted to be someone who could share his life with someone else, someone who saw beyond the business persona he had carefully crafted. The next day, Liam invited Sarah to lunch at a small, quiet restaurant. They talked about everything, about their pasts, their dreams, and what they wanted out of life. Liam found himself opening up to her in ways he had never opened up to anyone before. He told her about his struggles with loneliness, about the pressure of being constantly surrounded by people who wanted something from him, but never truly cared about him as a person. Sarah listened, really listened, and for the first time in a long time, Liam felt heard. "You don't have to carry it all alone," she said gently. "It's okay to let people in, Liam. It's okay to ask for help." Her words resonated deeply with him, and he realized that he had been holding on to his pain, his struggles, for far too long. He didn't have to be strong all the time. He didn't have to be perfect. That afternoon, as they walked through the park, Liam took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off his chest. He looked at Sarah, feeling more connected to her than ever before. "Thank you," he said softly, "for being here, for helping me see things differently." Sarah smiled, taking his hand in hers. "I'm just glad to be here, with you." Liam knew that their relationship had only just begun, but he felt something deep inside him that he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He wasn't sure where this path would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. He didn't want to walk it alone anymore. As they continued their walk, Liam realized that life wasn't just about building an empire or making money. It was about the people you shared it with, the connections you made, and the love that made everything else feel worthwhile. He looked at Sarah, smiling to himself. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something much more meaningful than anything he had ever accomplished in his career. As the days passed, Liam found himself spending more time with Sarah. The connection between them had only grown stronger, and he was beginning to realize that this was more than just a passing feeling. It was something real, something he hadn't experienced in years. The walls he had built around himself, the ones that had kept him safe in his world of business and wealth, were slowly crumbling. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel scared. He felt free. Free to be himself, free to love, and free to finally let someone in. He hadn't realized how lonely he had been until Sarah came into his life. She had shown him a side of the world that wasn't about money, status, or power. It was about kindness, compassion, and vulnerability, things he had been missing for so long. But as much as he had come to care for her, a part of him still struggled with his old self. The CEO who was always in control, the man who never let his guard down. He hadn't shared everything with Sarah yet, especially the extent of his business world. He had told her he was a CEO, but he hadn't told her just how much pressure came with the job, How every decision he made affected thousands of lives. How he had to constantly prove himself, even to those closest to him. Sarah, on the other hand, was different. She didn't care about his wealth or his title. She saw him, Liam, the man who had been lost in the chaos of his life for so long. And yet, despite the peace she had brought him, there was still a lingering fear inside him, the fear of losing her. He hadn't been in a relationship in years, and the thought of letting her down, of not living up to her expectations, terrified him. But as he sat across from her one evening, enjoying a quiet dinner, Liam realized something important. Sarah wasn't asking him to be perfect. She wasn't asking for the billionaire CEO. She was asking for Liam, the person. "You've been so different lately," Sarah said, her voice soft but curious. "What's changed?" Liam looked at her, his heart racing. For the first time, he decided to be honest with her. "I've been trying to figure out who I really am," he said, his voice a little shaky. "For so long, I've been living for everyone else, making decisions for the company, for the people around me. But I've forgotten who I am, what I want." Sarah smiled gently. "And what do you want, Liam?" He took a deep breath, feeling his chest tighten with the weight of the words he was about to say. "I want to be with you," he said simply, his eyes locking with hers. "I want to build something real with you." Sarah's smile widened, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. There was no pressure, no expectations, just the two of them, in that moment. "I want that too," she replied, her voice full of warmth. "I'm glad you're letting yourself be vulnerable, Liam. It's a beautiful thing to see." For the first time, Liam didn't feel like he had to hide. He didn't have to wear the mask of the CEO, the billionaire who had it all together. He could just be Liam, and that was enough. That night, as they walked through the city, hand in hand, Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of peace he had never felt before. The world around him was still as hectic as ever, but with Sarah by his side, everything seemed a little more manageable. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time, he was ready to face them, not alone, but with Sarah. The following week, Liam took Sarah on a trip to the coast. He had planned everything meticulously, wanting to give her a taste of the life he had never shared with anyone. A life away from the pressure of business, a life where they could just be themselves. They spent the day walking along the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore, and for the first time in a long time, Liam felt truly at peace. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the water, Liam turned to Sarah. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "For everything. For being patient with me. For showing me that there's more to life than work and money." Sarah looked at him, her eyes sparkling. "You don't have to thank me," she said, her voice tender. "I'm just happy to be with you, Liam. You're enough as you are." Liam felt his heart swell. In that moment, he realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Not in his business, not in his wealth, but in love. True love, the kind that accepted him for who he was, flaws and all. And as they stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Liam knew that this was just the beginning of something beautiful, something real. Weeks passed since Liam and Sarah's trip to the coast, and their relationship continued to grow stronger. The connection they shared was undeniable, and it seemed as though they had built a solid foundation of trust, something Liam had never experienced before. He had started to feel more like himself again, free from the pressures of his title, the weight of being a CEO. With Sarah, he could simply be Liam, and that was something he had always wanted. But despite the warmth and love between them, there were still moments of doubt. Liam found himself questioning if he truly deserved this happiness. For so long, he had focused on his career and building an empire, pushing people away, and now, Sarah was everything to him. She had shown him a different side of life, a side where love and connection mattered more than anything else. One evening, as they sat in his penthouse, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was living in a dream. He had everything he could ever want: wealth, success, and the woman who had made him realize that there was more to life than work. But there was something holding him back, his fear of losing her. "Do you ever wonder if you deserve this?" Liam asked, his voice quiet as he looked at Sarah, who was sitting across from him, her legs tucked underneath her. "What do you mean?" she asked, tilting her head, her eyes filled with concern. "Everything. This life, this love. I've been so focused on work and success for so long that I almost forgot what it's like to truly live. And now that I have you, I don't want to mess it up. Sarah reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. Liam, you don't have to be perfect. None of us do. We all have our flaws, our past, but that's what makes us who we are. And who you are is someone I care about deeply. Liam felt a weight lift off his chest as her words sank in. It was exactly what he needed to hear. He had spent so much time trying to be someone he wasn't, trying to meet expectations that weren't his own, and now, he realized, he didn't have to do that anymore. Thank you, he said softly, squeezing her hand. I don't know what I'd do without you. Sarah smiled, her eyes warm. You don't have to worry about that. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. The next day, Liam made a decision. He was going to take a step back from the constant hustle and grind of his business. He needed to show Sarah how much she meant to him, and he realized that if he wanted to truly build a future with her, he needed to be present, not just physically, but emotionally as well. He started by clearing his schedule for the next few weeks, putting aside meetings and corporate events that had once consumed his life. He wanted to focus on what mattered most, his relationship with Sarah. He began planning a special surprise for her, something that would show her just how much she meant to him. One evening, after a long day of work, Liam asked Sarah to meet him at a small, quiet park in the city. It was a place they had walked through together early on in their relationship, a spot that felt peaceful and untouched by the chaos of the world. As she arrived, she noticed a small table set up with candles, flowers, and a bottle of wine. Liam was standing by the table, looking nervous but excited. What's all this? She asked, her eyes lighting up in surprise. Liam smiled, taking her hand and guiding her to the table. I've realized something, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. I've spent so much time trying to control everything in my life, trying to make sure everything is perfect. But what I've learned is that perfection doesn't matter. What matters is being here with you. Sarah looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. Liam, this is incredible. He smiled, pulling out a chair for her. I just wanted to show you that I'm here for you. And I want to keep being here, for us. They sat down together, the soft glow of the candles illuminating the evening around them. As they ate and talked, Liam felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he wasn't worrying about his business or the future. He was simply living in the moment, enjoying the time he had with Sarah. As the evening came to a close, Liam reached across the table and took her hand once more. Sarah, I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you. You've made me realize that love is more important than anything else, and I'm ready to commit to you, to us. Sarah's eyes shone with tears, her smile wide and genuine. Liam, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. They sat there for a moment, their hands intertwined, both of them feeling a sense of fulfillment and hope for the future. In that moment, Liam knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together, side by side. As the weeks went by, Liam and Sarah's bond grew deeper. They were no longer just two people who had met by chance. They were partners, facing life together, and it felt natural in a way that Liam hadn't anticipated. Every day spent with Sarah felt like a step forward, not just in their relationship, but in Liam's own journey of self-discovery. He was becoming more aware of how much he had missed out on by burying himself in work for so many years. He had spent so much of his life chasing success that he had forgotten what it was like to truly live, to truly love. With Sarah by his side, everything seemed to make sense. She had shown him a new way of living, a life where love, kindness, and presence were just as important as ambition and success. It was a revelation, and he was ready to embrace it. Yet, as they spent more time together, Liam started to notice that there were still a few things that weren't quite as perfect as they seemed. As much as he had opened up to Sarah, there was still a lingering fear inside him. A fear that, no matter how much he loved her, he wasn't enough. That he would fail her in some way, just like he had failed to build meaningful connections in his past. That fear weighed heavily on him, but he pushed it aside, choosing to focus on the present instead. The present was Sarah, and that was all that mattered. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Liam arrived at Sarah's apartment. She had invited him over for dinner, and he was eager to spend time with her. As he knocked on the door and heard her footsteps approaching, his heart skipped a beat. She opened the door with a bright smile, looking as beautiful as ever. Hey you, she said, pulling him into a warm hug. Liam smiled, holding her tightly. Hey, yourself. he replied, his voice filled with affection. You look amazing. She laughed softly, stepping back to let him in. So do you, as always. As they sat down to eat, the conversation flowed effortlessly, as it always did. They talked about everything and nothing, from work to their childhoods, from their hopes for the future to the little moments that made them happy. But as the night wore on, Liam felt a shift in the atmosphere. Sarah seemed quieter than usual, and he couldn't quite put his finger on why. Finally, after a long silence, Sarah looked at him with a serious expression. Liam, there's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice softer than usual. His heart sank. He wasn't sure why, but the tone in her voice made him feel uneasy. What's wrong? He asked, his voice full of concern. She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. It's about my past, she said, her eyes searching his. I've never really talked about it before, but I think it's time. Liam's brow furrowed. He had never asked Sarah about her past, never pressured her to open up, but the idea that she was keeping something from him made him feel a pang of uncertainty. You don't have to tell me if you're not ready, he said gently, reaching out to take her hand. But if you want to, I'm here. Sarah gave him a small smile, squeezing his hand in return. I want to, Liam, she said, her voice steady now. I just didn't want to burden you with it. But I can't keep hiding it anymore. She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. Before I met you, I was in a really bad relationship. It was abusive, both emotionally and physically. I got out of it, but it took me a long time to heal. And even now, sometimes I struggle with trusting people. Liam's heart ached as he listened to her story. He had no idea what she had been through, and hearing it made him realize just how strong she was. He didn't know how she had survived it, but he admired her resilience. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. I know, she said softly. I felt it from the moment I met you. You've shown me what it's like to be loved for who I really am, not just for what people expect me to be. Liam reached out to gently touch her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're amazing, Sarah, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. You deserve all the love and happiness in the world. They sat there in silence for a moment, their hands still intertwined, as the weight of the conversation settled between them. Liam realized that, even though he had his own fears and insecurities, Sarah had opened up to him in a way that he hadn't expected. She had trusted him with her past, and that meant more than words could express. He leaned in, kissing her forehead softly. Thank you for sharing that with me, he said, his voice tender. I promise I'll always be here for you, no matter what. Sarah smiled, the warmth returning to her eyes. I know you will, Liam, she said, her voice filled with affection. And I'm grateful for that every day. As they sat together that night, the weight of their shared vulnerability seemed to bring them even closer. They were no longer two people with separate lives. They were partners, each carrying their own struggles, but finding strength in one another. Liam knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. And for the first time, he truly believed that they could overcome anything. He had found not just love, but someone who understood him, someone who had shown him that it was okay to be vulnerable, to let someone in. It was a lesson he would never forget, and it was one he was grateful to have learned with Sarah by his side. The following months felt like a whirlwind for Liam and Sarah, but in the best way possible. Their relationship continued to deepen, and the trust they had built together was unshakable. As Liam opened up more about his fears and past, Sarah did the same. They shared their hopes, their dreams, and their flaws, and in doing so, they created a bond that neither had expected but both had longed for. But just when things were going smoothly, life had a way of throwing them a curveball. One afternoon, Liam received a call from his attorney. It was about the business. As much as he had wanted to step back, the reality of running a billion-dollar company couldn't be ignored. There were major decisions to be made, and the pressure was mounting. Liam, I need you to make a decision about the merger by the end of the week. His attorney's voice echoed on the phone. The board is getting restless, and if we don't act soon, we could lose everything. Liam listened closely, his mind racing. The business was on the verge of something huge, but it also came with the risk of alienating everyone in his life, especially Sarah. He looked over at her as she sat on the couch, her eyes focused on the book she was reading. She had no idea about the weight that was bearing down on him. He could feel the familiar pressure building, but this time, it felt different. He was no longer just making decisions for the business. He was making decisions that affected his future with Sarah. He needed to make the right choice. Liam, his attorney's voice pulled him back. Are you there? Yes, Liam replied, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. I'll handle it. I'll let you know by the end of the week. He hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The weight of the decision loomed over him, but for the first time, he wasn't sure he wanted to carry it alone. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Liam couldn't help but feel the distance growing between them, even though Sarah hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't her fault. It was his own internal battle. He couldn't help but wonder if he was pulling away because of the business, because of the world he had spent so many years building. He had told Sarah that he was done with the relentless pressure of his CEO role, but now, as the stakes got higher, he felt torn. He could feel her watching him, sensing the shift in his energy. Liam, she said softly, what's going on? You've been distant all evening. Her voice was gentle but filled with concern. He put his fork down and sighed. I've got a big decision to make, Sarah, he said, his voice low. The business, it's demanding more from me again, and I don't know how to balance it with what I have with you. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand, her touch grounding him. You've already made the decision, Liam, she said calmly. You've chosen me, and you've chosen us. The rest can wait. Liam shook his head, his thoughts in turmoil. It's not that simple. The business is my responsibility. It's not something I can just walk away from. Sarah squeezed his hand. I understand that, she said, her voice steady. But you're not alone in this. You don't have to carry the weight by yourself. Her words hit him like a wave. He had been so focused on trying to do everything alone that he hadn't considered that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to. Maybe he could trust Sarah with the decision, just as she had trusted him with hers. For the first time, Liam realized that he had a choice. He didn't have to let the business consume him again. He didn't have to lose himself in the pressure of it all. He could have both. He could have Sarah and his career. He just had to find a way to balance them. I've been afraid of losing everything again, Liam admitted, his voice filled with vulnerability. But what I'm realizing is that everything I need is already here. Sarah smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. I'm here, Liam. And I'll always be here, no matter what. In that moment, Liam felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in years, he felt truly at ease with himself and with the choices he had to make. The next morning, Liam took a bold step. He called his attorney and made the decision to hold off on the merger. He would take a step back from the constant pressure of the business world and focus on what truly mattered, his relationship with Sarah. It wasn't the easy choice, but it was the right one. That afternoon, as he sat down with Sarah to talk about the decision he had made, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. I've decided to step away from the merger for now, he said, his voice firm. I'm going to take some time to focus on us, on our future. Sarah's eyes lit up, and a smile spread across her face. You're sure? She asked, her voice soft. Liam nodded. I'm sure. I've realized that there's more to life than just business. And I want to build something with you, Sarah. Something real. As they held each other that night, Liam knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. One that was no longer defined by business or success, but by love, trust, and the promise of a future together. Months passed since Liam made the decision to step back from the business and focus on his relationship with Sarah. They had settled into a routine that was fulfilling in ways Liam had never thought possible. For the first time in his life, he felt balanced, no longer consumed by the demands of his career, but instead present in his personal life, fully engaged with Sarah. The weight of his past decisions, the sacrifices he had made for success, felt lighter now. Together, they had built something beautiful, and it was only growing stronger. One evening, as they sat in the park they often visited, Liam looked at Sarah with a sense of gratitude he had never felt before. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue across the city, and the world around them felt peaceful. I never thought I could feel this way, Liam said quietly, his eyes reflecting the warmth of the moment. Sarah looked at him, her smile soft. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent so much of my life chasing things that didn't matter. The money, the success, the power. I thought that was everything. He paused, taking her hand in his. But with you, I realize now that it's love, connection, and being present that truly matters. You've shown me what real happiness is. Sarah squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with affection. I'm glad you see that, Liam. I've always believed that love is what makes everything else worthwhile. They sat there in silence for a while, just enjoying each other's company. The city was busy around them, but in that moment, it felt like it was just the two of them, and nothing else mattered. But as much as they were in harmony now, Liam knew that life wasn't always smooth sailing. There were still challenges ahead, but he felt equipped to face them with Sarah by his side. That night, as they lay in bed, Liam turned to her, his voice serious. "Sarah, I've been thinking," he began. She turned to him, sensing that he had something important to say. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I know we've been through a lot together, and I can't imagine my life without you. But I want to make this official, Sarah. I want us to build a future together, not just as a couple, but as partners in every sense of the word." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, and she looked at him, her eyes filled with love and warmth. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smiled, his heart pounding with anticipation. "I am," he said, pulling out a small box from under the pillow. "I want to marry you, Sarah. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she looked at him, overwhelmed with emotion. "Liam." She couldn't find the words at first, but then she whispered, "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes." Liam slid the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, holding each other tightly as the reality of the moment sank in. In that instant, everything in Liam's life felt complete. He had everything he had ever wanted, not just the success or the wealth, but the love and partnership he had been searching for all along. The next few months were filled with excitement and preparation for their wedding. It wasn't an extravagant affair, but it was everything they had dreamed of. Surrounded by close family and friends, they exchanged vows in a beautiful, intimate ceremony. As they stood before everyone, Liam felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that he had found his true partner. Sarah had been the missing piece in his life, the one who had shown him what truly mattered, and now, together, they were ready to face whatever the future held. Their wedding day was just the beginning. After the ceremony, as they danced under the stars, Liam looked at Sarah, his heart full. "This is just the start of our story," he said softly. Sarah smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I know," she replied, her voice filled with certainty. "And I can't wait to see what comes next." From that moment on, Liam knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together, hand in hand. They had built something real, something that would withstand anything life could throw at them. And as they stepped into their new life together, Liam knew that this was the happiest he had ever been, and that happiness wasn't just found in success, but in love. The love he had for Sarah and the love she had shown him. Together, they had everything they needed.